The year is 1879. And we find ourselves in an American town like any other American town at the time. Streets are bustling. Women in voluminous petticoats are towing children along as they're on their way to do their weekly shopping. Distinguished men in top hats and tails plod methodically along the sidewalks on their way to do business, probably. Or whatever it was that men were trying to do back then.
Surely it was only business.
Business.
And the good kind.
Carriages roll by, the horses clip-clopping jauntily. The morning might be just like any other morning, except that this morning, a crowd has formed in front of the local drugstore. Bodies clamoring close together as they jockey for a better view of a man at the center of the crowd, standing on a wooden box. A soapbox, maybe. We don't know. The man is the drugstore owner. Everyone in town knows him, and he excitedly waves people to him as he shouts above the din. "Good friends," he shouts, "you all know the pain I've suffered these past months, the discomfort, the embarrassment. For too long, my kidneys have caused me no end of torment. What? So much so that I thought I might well and truly die. But today I stand in front of you a miracle. My kidneys have been completely healed." Excited gasps and murmurs flutter through the crowd as the shop owner continues. "No longer am I held captive to my pain, thanks to..." He pauses a moment to reach into his pocket, and the crowd holds their collective breath, waiting to see what he'll pull out. "Thanks to Dr. Kilmer's swamp root." And the man proudly produces a dark brown bottle with a bright orange label on it, with the portrait of a man on the front, and he shows it off to the crowd. The crowd gasps excitedly. They're eating this up. The owner points his free hand to the man standing beside him, a middle-aged man with prominent mutton chops that converge above his lips, making sort of a continuous gigantic mustache up the sides of his face. He's a striking figure, familiar even, since his is the face on the front of the bottle.
Oh boy.
"Suffer no longer, my good friends," the owner shouts again, "thanks to this man right here, Dr. S. Andral Kilmer." And the crowd erupts in a thunderous applause, and they all try to buy the medicine.
Oh, good. Here we go. We're starting with shopping.
I'm Karyn Harding, an amateur genealogist, and I've spent an embarrassing amount of time and money unlocking the stories of the people who had to exist for me to exist.
And I'm Kim McMasters, a millennial with no interest in history, having kids, or leaving a legacy of my own.
And you're listening to Low Ancestry. Each episode, I'll share one story from my family tree with Kim, proving that ordinary people like me, with ordinary ancestry like mine, have compelling and sometimes scandalous or heartbreaking stories buried within them.
Today is one of those family stories that I think would be considered, and let me check my notes here, grasping. This is a story about local infamy, wealth, and power that distant relatives like myself come out of the woodwork for just to be considered a part of it, just to bask in some of that glory and celebrity with only that thin thread of association.
So you're feeling some pride right now.
Oh, I wouldn't say pride.
You're feeling something.
I'm feeling something. I just want to be a part of it. Today, that's me. Just grasping at straws.
Okay.
I'm the distant relative clinging onto the barest of connections to my celebrity relatives. Because today I'm going to tell you the story of my fourth cousin 4 times removed and his family.
I can't do that. Math?
And I don't expect you to.
That's far away.
That's really far away. It's far away up and it's far away over.
Yeah, you go straight, you turn left.
And you don't come back.
He's over there somewhere.
And yeah, bye.
Okay.
And you might be thinking, Karyn, that's nothing. Why did you take the time to research someone so distant?
How did you get in my head?
I know you too well. And I also know that it's an insane thing that I've just prefaced this whole podcast with.
Yes.
The answer is that this family was a local legend in the area that my mom and her family grew up in. And so everyone knew who they were. And it just so happened that my mom and her family share the last name as these local legends. which meant that most people in our family thought that the connection was much closer, though nobody knew for sure. So it was one of my first missions as family genealogist to solve the case. And what I found was, yeah, we're related, but like not closely.
No. And there's a certain threshold, I think, where it's like, are you related?
But I think what I learned is that the actual relationship was never really the point. The name, the association, the lore, they were so much bigger and so much more prominent in the area and in our family than any thinly matched DNA. And in fact, my family in past generations believed that we were much more closely linked, and they would tell people that they were closely linked. So whether they knew for sure or not, or were just doing it just to kind of be a part of it, we don't know. So what's true and what's perceived are very different things. So I'm telling this story today about a family that we have thought about a lot, even though we're not really a part of them. Let's dive in.
I can't wait.
I won't just be talking about my fourth cousin 4 times removed. I'll also talk at length about his brother and his nephew, as you will come to see. But we want to start with the man who started it all. We'll start with Dr. Sylvester Andral Kilmer, or as he's more commonly known as Andral Kilmer or Dr. Kilmer.
That's a good name.
Here's a picture of the man himself. Kim, what are we looking at?
We are looking, I'm trying to figure out who would play him. He's got a bit of a, I want to say like Bradley Cooper could do it.
Are you sure?
No, maybe I'm not sure. There's something in the eyes that's
got Cooper all up in him.
It's got Cooper all up in him. Something kind of alluring, I can't lie.
Oh, interesting.
He's got a raised eyebrow.
He does.
And you know that means something sneaky.
It means he knows things.
He's also got an absolutely unbelievably structured handlebar mustache chop.
You can't tell where the mustache ends and the mutton chops start.
No, and I don't know if there is a start or an end.
They flow together seamlessly.
And there's no, it's like an awning for his mouth.
Yeah, and there's nothing underneath.
No, but there's also not going to be any skin cancer underneath.
That's so true.
Because he's got shade.
His bald head, though, could do something.
Yeah, well,
about
you
him.
pick and choose.
Yeah, for sure.
He looks distinguished.
And he looks like he knows stuff, which he does know stuff. But after all the big to-do that I've made about being connected to celebrity and fame, you might be wondering, Karyn, who is this rando that no one's ever heard of? Rest assured, back in his time, in the late 1800s and early 1900s, Dr. Kilmer was a household name across the United States. And more importantly, he and his family have been local celebrities that entire time up until now in Binghamton, New York, my mother's hometown. And my mother gets asked all the time, her and my uncles, if they have any connection to the Kilmers, to which she's always replied that she wasn't sure, but maybe. And it's a common interaction that my mom's family has because the Kilmers have fingerprints all over Binghamton, and you'd have to be living under a rock if you've lived in the city and haven't at least heard of them. That would be insane. The family commissioned some of the most prominent buildings in the skyline, including a building still called the Kilmer Building. And they had one of the biggest, most impressive mansions in the city, which is still functioning, and you can book your next wedding or special event there right now.
Oh, and I will.
Arguably, the fanciest restaurant in the city is called Remlick, which is just Kilmer backwards.
Okay, good.
Which is a nod to the luxury yacht donated by the Kilmers to the U.S. government to fight World War I.
Oh, my word.
And it's hard not to jump on all that local excitement and be like, yeah, we actually are connected. And then proceed to bask in the afterglow that is local fame. To do that, though, it's worth noting that I would also be basking in America's fraught history with the wellness industry, as well as our troubled connection between wealth, power, and the free press.
There it is.
So I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let's go back to our boy S. Andral, and we'll start in 1878 in Binghamton, New York, which, if we recall from previous episodes, was built on Haudenosaunee land, sometimes referred to as the Iroquois Confederacy or the Six Nations. And by 1878, Binghamton is coming into its own. As we know now, its famous nickname, Kim, what is it?
The Valley of Opportunity.
It's like you're from there now. You're like a local.
Oh my God, thank you.
It's a city of industry and the working class. And here are some other things that are happening around the world in
my favorite part.
1878.
Is my favorite part.
In 1878, most of Europe is beefing with the Ottoman Empire.
Okay. Okay.
A lot of bad blood between those guys.
Yeah.
Leo Tolstoy publishes Anna Karenina.
Okay.
The world's first telephone exchange begins commercial operations in New Haven, Connecticut.
What do you think they said?
And then lastly, Joseph Stalin is born.
Mm-hmm.
There he is.
Mm-hmm.
By 1878, Dr. Kilmer has already lived in Binghamton for a few years, having moved there from Schoharie County, New York, where he grew up, though he had previously spent time in New York City, Philadelphia, and Chicago getting a broad education in medicine. And although he studied all kinds of things like surgery, eye and ear infections, obstetrics, and diseases of women, his passion was homeopathy, which he studied for years in Schoharie under the tutelage of renowned homeopathic doctor. But eventually, he wanted to break out on his own, and he chose Binghamton to open up his own homeopathic lab. And if you're like me, you might want to know what homeopathy is.
Yeah, why don't you tell the listeners?
Kim, I'd love to know if you have like a stab. What do you think homeopathy is?
Well, I feel like anything I say is going to offend some homeopathic doctors potentially. But it does feel a little alternative.
You're right.
A little bit like alternative medicine.
Yeah,
Like-
it's on the fringe.
Have an herb, eat a stick, chew a root,
Yeah,
swallow a bug.
you're actually dead on.
Great, thank you.
I mean, that really is what it is. It was considered fringe. Even back in this time, it was a field of study that people were doing more prominently, but it was still considered kind of on the fringe of medical study. Its origins come from the late 1700s in Germany, but it is still practiced today. It is governed usually by two main rules, which are like cures like and the law of minimum dose. What that means, according to WebMD, is that something that brings on symptoms in a healthy person can, in a very small dose, treat an illness with similar symptoms. Let me give you an example. Would that help?
Yeah, but I'm not excited about it.
You're not jiving with it.
No.
So, for example, a red onion, that makes your eyes water. So, red onion could be used as a homeopathic remedy for allergies because your eyes water with allergies. See what
Okay.
they're going for here?
Flawless.
Flawless idea. And in the 19th century, there was a real craze about these remedies, which ran the gamut of ingredients and promises for what they cured. And a common way that we refer to these medicines is patent medicines. And the one you might be most familiar with is Clark Stanley's snake oil, which not only didn't contain any snake oil at all, it's now become the catch-all phrase to describe all of these medicines, or really anything that's just a little bit shisty.
Yeah.
And Dr. Kilmer is the next in line of that beautiful lineage.
Now, here's a quick question. In talking about homeopathic medicine, I think I mentioned before that I think of natural ingredients or things that are maybe of the earth
Yeah.
and potentially prescribed at the wrong time.
Yeah,
Oftentimes.
sure.
How much of this is derived from native culture and or cultures of
Yeah, a lot of
other places?
them riff off of Native American stereotypes for their marketing. I don't know how much of it was ever actually based off of Native American practices, but I think that image of the native person at one with the wild was a marketing strategy for a lot of these medicines.
and I think still is.
Isn't that just the way? And this all started in the 19th century.
Great.
Perfect. Let's go back to the lab.
Okay, good. I prefer it there.
We're back at Dr. Kilmer's lab. He's getting to work on concocting his own set of remedies, and he invents what he believes is the greatest remedy ever seen for the kidney, liver, and bladder. It's all three at once. And he's not the only one. People immediately start latching onto this remedy, swearing by its powers. And in 1878, Dr. Kilmer begins mass production of what he calls swamp root.
What is swamp root?
Oh, let me just tell you. So it's sort of used as a catch-all at first, even though the company would often say, it's not for everything, just your kidney, liver, and bladder. But
Which is a lot of things.
which is a lot of things. But then there was always like a wink. But you know, your whole
Yeah.
body. It is made with so many different ingredients. And Kim, I'm going to have you read the list of ingredients. If you can't pronounce anything, just power through it.
Starting with alcohol. Alcohol 10%, which is not that high.
Yeah, but when you have 20, 30 ingredients, that's pretty high.
Yeah, okay. All right, 10% alcohol. Buchu leaves. I'm not sure whether it is spelled B-U-C-H-U. I'm not sure whether to say buchu or buku.
Buku is hysterical.
Buku leaves is very funny. Skullcap leaves, golden seal root, columbo root, valerian root, cinnamon, oil of juniper, oil of birch, balsam copaiba,
Maybe.
balsam tolu, Venus, the planet, turpentine, peppermint herb, rhubarb root, mandrake root, sassafras, and Cape aloes. That's a lot of nonsense.
It's a lot of nonsense, but that's a lot of stuff to fight your kidney, liver, and bladder issues.
Well, and there's Venus, and that is an awfully powerful ingredient.
If you've got a goddess on your side,
I
you
know.
can't lose. So now, if you want, everyone at home can make their own swamp root. Legally and medicinally, I cannot advise that, though.
No, and really in any other way, we do not advise doing anything.
Yeah, I can't stress enough that we
talk
don't
about.
advise that. Those are the ingredients. You'll notice the first ingredient is alcohol, and it's the most prominent ingredient in swamp root. And that's not unique to Dr. Kilmer's recipe. Most homeopathic remedies of this time, as well as other patent medicines, like the snake oil, had become popular by diluting their medicines with alcohol or even morphine, opium, or cocaine.
Whoa.
So if you take a vial of mostly opium, whatever discomfort you feel is sure to go away.
Good Lord.
But if you can believe it, the dilution wasn't a trick or a con. It was part of the principles of homeopathy. Because if you remember the law of minimal dose, it means that the ingredients supplied must be cut down or diluted into a low dose, which was done by adding this like one main ingredient to do that. So the fact that swamp root has alcohol has a precedence. And they market that theirs has alcohol very prominently because by the late 1800s, families were starting to get concerned about giving their loved ones certain patent medicines that contain morphine or opium because Western medicine was learning that this wasn't an ideal thing to do to just casually give your children and loved ones massive amounts of opium.
Children.
Yeah, children took this kind of medicine all the time.
What a wild world.
Alcohol, on the other hand, totally fine, which meant swamp root was safer. Dr. Kilmer recommended.
Are we assuming that all of these things are like ground into a powder or extracted? Do we know?
That's proprietary knowledge, Kim. And no, I really don't know.
My mistake.
And I doubt Dr. Kilmer would have spread that widely because he would have
Surely.
wanted to keep it a secret.
Well, maybe he doesn't even know.
Yeah, it just kind of comes out that way.
Yeah.
But swamp root becomes so popular that Dr. Kilmer becomes overwhelmed by the supply and demand of it all. So he recruits his brother, Jonas M. Kilmer, to come to Binghamton and help him out. And there is a Jonas Brothers joke somewhere in here, but I wasn't able to figure one out.
No, give me time. I'll get there.
You'll get there, maybe later. Jonas has no medical background. Instead, he's a successful businessman, and he had been living in New York City and rising through the ranks of some mercantile business firms. I don't know what those are.
No, I don't either.
But it sounds important.
Not as soft as the
textiles.
The textiles, I know that much. That's just like a vague... That's like when you say I'm a
merchant.
I'm a merchandising consultant. That could be anything.
It could be anything. And that sounds correct for this family to just kind of have like, I'm a consultant.
Don't trust.
Don't trust. Jonas obviously sees the potential in his brother's remedy because he drops all of what he's doing in New York and he moves to Binghamton to oversee the business side of his brother's venture. And when Jonas's son, Willis Sharp Kilmer, graduates from Cornell in 1880, he also comes and joins his father and uncle to take over the marketing, fully establishing the family business as Dr. Kilmer and Company. So if swamp root was popular before, under Jonas and Willis's direction, it was a volcanic explosion of success. Jonas streamlined production and started expanding. And Willis, he became what I would argue was the real reason for the success of Dr. Kilmer and Company, because the advertising that he did was... He was almost like a pioneer in advertising.
Like a Don Draper, you might say.
Before Don Draper. He was Don Draper before he was cool. Advertising was not what it is now. And the most common forms of it in the 1800s or before were just like posters, circulars, pamphlets. Like it's
Yelling out loud.
yelling out loud. That's exactly correct. But Willis was thinking bigger, and he does so much more than that. His wife, Beatrice Richardson, she was the daughter of a socially prominent exec in New York City. That executive worked at a newspaper advertising agency. So Willis had this connection, and he used that to place ads for swamp root in newspapers all over the country. I mean, literally all over the country.
Wow.
And he didn't stop there. Willis was an early adopter of utilizing testimonials as well as coupons and swag, which was not done that often during this time.
Wow.
Some of these ads would offer a free vial of swamp root if the reader clipped the ad and sent it in with the order. Or the offer might be that they would get a free almanac or a book about how to use the remedy with their purchase. And the almanac and book, of course, contained more ads and more testimonials about how Dr. Kilmer and Company worked for them.
I mean, I think we know what our first piece of merch is going to be.
Swamp root!
It's going to be a swamp root t-shirt.
I wonder if we could get sued for that.
Probably, but it's not going to stop me.
Yeah, and it couldn't. But what we're looking at here is the first signs of influencer culture.
Yeah.
These testimonials were super popular, and I have one here, Kim, if you want to look at it. This is one example.
Oh my goodness gracious. Okay. This is a testimonial?
Yeah, there's other that are bigger and longer and have more words.
Well, this does not have many words. It appears to be a drawn ad of sorts with a very angry man.
He just looks resolute.
I don't know about, look at that furrowed brow.
Yeah, he's got furrowed brow. He's serious.
It says at the very top, well-deserved reward, faith, persistence, and swamp root work marvels.
That's right.
That's it?
And then they give his name and where he's from. And a lot of these were more than that. It would be like, it would always had like a picture or a long description of who it was that was declaring how great it was. And usually they chose any given city's most prominent citizen. So if it was Philadelphia, they would find like their best citizens to give a testimonial about it. And these movers and shakers were like legislators, politicians, socialites, and other pharmacists.
And were they real testimonials?
I think so, because I think they were putting them in papers of the city. And so if it was like a politician and it wasn't real, I think they would have caught on real quick. But I bet they fluffed it. I bet they filled it out with
I'm
fake
sure
ones.
they fluffed it a bit.
Yeah, a little bit. There's this one ad that I think is so indicative of the kind of campaigns that Willis was running. He took out a full page in the Philadelphia Inquirer, and I'm going to show that to you now. You can see that all around the outside of the page are just multiple testimonials. There's a few pictures. Wow. It's chock-a-block full of them.
There is a lot of text on this page.
A lot. And that's a full page that he took out in a prominent newspaper.
And 3 different drawings of the same man?
I know. They all look kind of the same.
They're all the same. They've all got a handlebar mustache. They've all got a little swoop hair.
Mm-hmm.
And they are white men.
And they all freaking love swamp root.
They are nuts for swamp root.
They are cuckoo for swamp root. And then in the center, in the middle of all these testimonials, they talk about the benefits of it. I'm going to have you read the headline, Kim.
Okay. Tried and tested by thousands who stand high in this community. Swamp root, the great kidney remedy, the wonderful new discovery in medical science. It's like 5 taglines all put together.
So many taglines. And they just talk about how it's the best and like no matter what, this is going to cure you.
Now, wait a minute. In this time, when we're saying kidney remedy, what sort of kidney symptoms is this remedying?
They actually talk about that on the testimonial pages. I know you can't read it very well, but they literally give you a play-by-play instruction of how to find out if you have kidney problems. And they tell you to pee in a tube or on a piece of linen. And if it's a certain color or if there's sediment, then you have to take Dr. Kilmer's swamp root.
Can I read this?
Yeah, please.
Okay. If you need a medicine, you should have the best. So this is how to find out if you need swamp root, which I'm guessing every person does based on their description. If you are suffering from vague, mysterious ailments whose source seems to baffle the doctor's skill, your best way to find out if the kidneys are at fault is to fill a clean bottle or common glass with urine and let it stand 24 hours. If there is any sediment or settling, it signifies derangement of the kidneys. When urine stains linen, it is a certain evidence of kidney trouble. Too frequent desire to urinate day and night, or scanty urine, pain or dull ache in the back are also convincing proofs that kidneys and bladder are out of order.
Yeah, there you go. Now you know, Kim.
I know a couple of people who could benefit from swamp root.
Yeah, I doubt that they could benefit from swamp root.
Thank you for correcting me.
And then at the bottom of the page, they also talk about the free swag. Do you want to read that out?
I'm happy to do all this reading. I really feel like I could become an influencer with enough practice.
Yeah, and I hope Dr. Kilmer and Company hires you.
Yeah. A special arrangement has been made by which all readers of the Inquirer who have not already tried it may have a sample bottle of this famous new discovery sent absolutely free by mail. Also, a book telling all about it and its wonderful cures. Be sure and mention the Philadelphia Inquirer when sending your name and address to Dr. Kilmer & Co., Binghamton, New York.
The reason I had you read all that is just I think it's hysterical that we're doing some of the exact same stuff today. That's just a discount code.
Absolutely we are. Give us all of your information, which at the time is your address.
Yeah.
And then we will send you samples in a book.
Exactly.
And then we're going to kill you.
No, we'll just keep you addicted.
Well, oh, that's even better.
So advertising has certainly evolved, but we use so many of these principles today. Willis really was an advertising visionary. I'll give that to him, but don't get it twisted. He's the worst. And we will find that out soon enough.
If there wasn't even a doubt in my mind.
Yeah, he is the absolute worst, but he kind of did do a lot in this field that nobody else was doing.
Well, congratulations to him.
Thanks, Willis. The business side of things under Jonas and Willis and their capable hands is going so well that Dr. Kilmer is finally able to get back to what he really loves. He gets back to the lab discovering homeopathic remedies.
He loves those roots.
Your boy loves being in the lab. He wants to be there, not the office.
You know, you can't keep an artist from his art.
That's exactly correct. And now that he's back on his grind, he starts producing a whole line of other remedies to include next to the swamp root. Ocean weed heart remedy.
Okay, now wait a second.
I don't know what it does. Don't ask me.
It sounds like a weird bath bomb.
And then there's the problematically named Indian cough remedy.
Okay.
And then, of course, there's his famous complete female remedy.
Oh, good, great, good and great.
And this last one is something that Dr. Kilmer was really passionate about. Swamp Root launched him, but his real calling was what he called cancer and tumors. In his professional opinion, women were particularly susceptible to both cancer and tumor.
Cool.
And the complete female remedy was curated medicine just for her.
Wow.
It also had the bonus of curing any other sexist ailment that men thought were women's issues at the time. So it's an all-in-one miracle product.
It's just a wife fixer.
Kim, please read this ad for the female remedy
I don't
and let
want
us
to
know
say
what
these
it does.
words. Dr. Kilmer's female remedy, a great blessing to women. If you have nervous or sick headache, do you know the difference between a nervous and a sick headache?
No, I don't.
Well, then you probably don't need this great blessing. If you have chronic weakness, bearing down or perversions incident to life change, that's a lot of words. If you have suppressed or painful periods or ovarian dropsy,
check.
If you have suspicious growths, just anywhere,
Just any growth that seems sus.
sheesh. It will dispel those dull, tired looks and feelings and bring back youthful bloom and beauty, restores the nervous system. Restores the nervous system.
It sounds like the first antidepressant.
Honestly, yes. Did this guy have anything to do with hysteria?
Probably.
Mothers, give it to your weak and delicate daughters. Not a drop of impure blood can escape its healing and purifying influence.
Thank you.
I'm mad.
You should be, but also maybe we should just be grateful to the good doctor.
It is a great blessing to women.
He became so well known for this work that he would give lectures about it. And I would be remiss if we didn't take the time to read an excerpt from one of his lectures that he gave in Rochester, New York. It's entitled Woman, Her Past History, Present Condition, and Future Possibilities.
Oh boy.
And it's a little bit of a long one, but I think it's worth it.
There has always been something pathetic to me whenever I have considered the... I'm so mad.
I know.
I'm so mad
I know
already.
how to get you.
You do know how to get me. There has always been something pathetic to me whenever I have considered the lot of womankind. However pleasing and attractive it may seem upon the surface, it has been a record of trouble since the laying of the cornerstone of history. Just one cornerstone? Sacred record, intimating that it was not good for man to be alone, recites in the next chapter that the first woman's mission was to receive blame for the transgression of her husband. For the next 4,000 years, she was a slave, absolutely, recognized by only one qualification, physical beauty. I'm livid. The only women who then attained prominence or ruled kingdoms owed their sway wholly to personal endowments.
Nothing else.
Karyn.
Nothing else.
But while it has been painful to realize the misery which women are enduring, it has been a source of untold gratification that I have been able to so largely relieve this misery. The great demons which stand in the path of every woman are tumor and cancer. Toward them all instinctively turn with horror. More than 20 years ago, I realized these truths and began to earnestly investigate and study them. I found the cause, I investigated its course, I discovered a relief. Since then, my entire life and energy have been devoted to this one great object. And I have seen thousands of suffering women taken from the depths of misery and restored to perfect health through the use of the preparation now known as Dr. Kilmer's Complete Female Remedy.
Thank you, doctor.
I am fuming.
Yeah, as you should.
This sounds a little bit like a few work meetings that I've had in my life.
Oh, no. Yeah, I mean, the energy is familiar because I think we're in a golden age of men with podcast mics.
That's true.
And this energy is all around us.
Oh, my word.
I love that in the middle, there's like this brief moment when you're like, is he going to say that women have suffered under the patriarchy and only are known for their physical beauty? And then immediately he just swings right away from it and says out loud that he can claim victory and triumph over every trouble that we've ever had.
He has been able to so largely relieve our misery.
Thank God, but someone needed to do it.
Yeah.
Someone
needed to be a man.
It needed to be Dr. Kilmer. The medical system has been bad for women for a long time. And here's the proof.
Yeah, I mean, if every day that we're alive isn't proof, here's some more proof.
Meanwhile, the company is doing the best it ever has.
Ugh.
And it seems to be all thanks to Jonas and Willis. They must have thought so too, because in 1892, Jonas and Willis go to their brother, Dr. Kilmer, and they offer to buy all his shares in Dr. Kilmer and Company.
Whoa.
There are no details of this deal that I can find, so I don't know how or why this deal went down. But we do know that Dr. Kilmer takes the deal and he sells all of his shares to his brother and his nephew.
Are they still using his likeness on the bottles?
Oh, yeah. And this becomes a huge problem.
Uh-oh.
So a lot of people around Binghamton to this day say that S. Andral was forced out of or that he was like swindled into this deal. And I definitely think that's possible, but I don't have proof of it. But Dr. Kilmer was always more interested in the medical side of his work rather than the business. So there is a good chance that he might be thinking that he wants to focus on his medical work and just leave the business to his brother and nephew entirely. And Dr. Kilmer does something else in 1892 that makes me think that he was probably okay with letting go of the company, because S. Andral goes and buys a large plot of land out in the countryside outside of Binghamton, a place called Osborne Hollow, and he proceeds to build a huge resort hotel which he calls a sanitarium, and later he'll call it a cancertorium.
Oh, no.
And he claims that Osborne Hollow has springs that have healing properties on the land.
Cancertorium sounds like a really horrible DIY venue.
Yeah, and you get there and all the amps are blown.
And there's trash everywhere.
Bathroom unusable.
Non-existent.
Non-existent.
No door.
So the resort is quite literally built on these springs that he's talking about. And there's a picture of the coach house of the hotel that straddles the creek, which I love.
Wow.
It looks like it's going to fall in the middle and just collapse into the stream.
You know, I feel like I have a lot of references on here that might be very specific to our friendship, but I do think it's giving Dragonfly Inn.
Oh, yeah. Maybe.
But it's also absolutely haunted.
Gotta be haunted. It's,
like haunted the moment the picture is taken.
That's how it got haunted.
Yeah.
So right now it's a private residence and it still exists apparently. And it's still connected over the creek.
If you live there, call in.
Dr. Kilmer's sanitarium really becomes the place to go to cure cancer, since the doctor himself was considered an expert in it. In fact, he was claiming that the water at the resort would help him do it. And he even convinced the locals of Osborne Hollow to stop calling the town Osborne Hollow. He gets the name changed to Sanitaria Springs, which is the name it still has today.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, there's something icky about that.
There's something very icky about that. Without its namesake, Dr. Kilmer and Company didn't falter in the slightest. Advertising kept mounting and raking in more profits than ever, and it kind of seemed like the company didn't even need the doctor who started it all.
Isn't that funny how that works?
Except, company was still called Dr. Kilmer and Company, and all of the medicine was called Dr. Kilmer Swamp Root, and Dr. Kilmer's this or that and the other. And his portrait was on all of the medicine boxes. And also, all the ads in the newspapers also had his portraits, and they encouraged readers to write into the company about their experience. And each time they did, they addressed it to Dr. Kilmer, asking for his advice and what they could do to help with their kidney problems.
Uh-oh.
And in some cases, the company wrote back
as
the doctor.
Oh, no.
The interaction would go something like this. Someone would write in and say, I've got all these kidney problems. What should I do, Dr. Kilmer? And the company would say, yep. You've got bad kidneys. Thank God we've got swamp root. That'll help you. Love Dr. Kilmer. And that's kind of how it would go.
Bonkers.
And as I said before, I'm not convinced that Dr. Kilmer actually wanted to stay part of the company when he sold it. But I think this is like the last betrayal. And reading mail addressed to him and writing back to patients as if they were him, especially since he was attempting to found a sanitarium where he actually did treat patients, he used this inflection point as the place where he would begin to fight back.
Yeah.
S. Andral sues the company in a case called Kilmer v. Dr. Kilmer and Company.
So
that's just his name against himself.
I love it.
But ultimately, the case was dismissed by the court because they sided with the company. They said they fairly bought S. Andral out of his product. And it just so happened that the product that they bought had his name on it, but they couldn't help that. The company came like that. And as for the mail, nothing was proven. And the judge basically said, well, mail needs to go to the person it's addressed to. So that shouldn't happen. And the post office should do the right thing next time. And that was it. That was the whole thing.
Okay.
Which was a disappointment to Dr. Kilmer.
Sure.
So he starts to take matters into his own hands and he posts his own ads in the newspaper. And Kim, read this absolutely unhinged post that he does in the New York Tribune.
Oh, it's starting to feel like punishment what you're doing to me here. Be on the watch. That's all caps with an exclamation mark. Remember, in this branch, as a cancer and tumor expert - specialist, I, S. Andral Kilmer, MD, am alone. I'm starting to turn around on this guy. Maybe I like him.
He's a kook.
I am the Dr. Kilmer known in every household in America and Europe. I am the only Dr. Kilmer, parentheses, Dr. S. Andral Kilmer, in Binghamton. My decancerizing removal system is my practice as an expert - specialist. This department is my own. In this, I have resolved to be alone by myself. Therefore, those that want my experienced and skilled professional advice and care should always write to me. Both of those are capitalized. Dr. S. Andral Kilmer, 220 Chenango Street, Binghamton, NY, USA. Making a mistake in this, you may never hear from me, nor I ever hear of you.
This last part, I'm so excited for you to read out loud.
Rise from your beds and rooms this hour. Your deliverance has come once you're here under my decancerizing removal system.
It's so unhinged.
This is where we all went wrong. This is where everything went wrong.
This is where everything went wrong.
This is where it all started.
And also, can I just say, men are so emotional, huh? Too bad they don't have a remedy for that. Sounds like they could really use one.
I am alone. That really got me.
He says alone so many times. And also he says that he's an expert specialist so many times that you start to wonder, is he?
To some extent, I don't blame him. To some extent, I'm
he's
like,
so mad.
I would be so mad too. And you don't go parading around as me, the doctor. I am alone.
I am alone in this.
But this is nutso. Maybe he thought that he needed to construct it the way that the ads were being constructed.
Yeah, sort of like a poke or a taunt.
Or a self-testimonial.
A self-testimonial.
Which I think we can all afford to give
but
ourselves
the fact that he
some
took up so
self-testimonials.
much space in the newspaper and be like, me, I'm the only one.
There are a lot of things in caps, I'll say that much.
It's like if a boomer wrote Facebook post.
That's exactly what it is. The only thing we're missing is a Tweety Bird picture.
So the fallout from the buyout becomes a huge family feud as well as a public one. And the bickering in the newspaper and the courtrooms turn to something far more sinister. Arson. And that's next time on Low Ancestry with part 2 of the Kilmers.
Low Ancestry is written and produced by Karyn Harding and co-hosted by me, Kim McMasters, with original music and audio engineering by Benjamin Malk. Original cover art was designed by Christina Swanson of Swansong Creative. Resources pertaining to today's episode and a link to the official bibliography can be found in our show notes or at our website, lowancestry.com. All research was conducted by Karyn, but she's been known to be wrong on occasion. So if you'd like to connect with Karyn or even send her a correction, you can email us at connect@lowancestry.com or find us on Instagram @lowancestry. Genealogy is, after all, a community effort. Thank you so much for listening, and if you like what you hear, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love to hear from you, and frankly, we really need this.